practically a nuclear flu, a powerful airstrike on Ukrainian armed forces positions that has produced footage people are comparing to a nuclear explosion. Let's figure out what happened and why this topic blew up the internet. A secret message from the USA. Who delivered the letter to Putin and what was it about? All the details in our broadcast today. A shift towards Ukraine and Armenia's unexpected move. What the intelligence says and how Europe reacted to it, we'll find out right now. The European Union is afraid to unfreeze Russian assets. Why are they looking for a scapegoat and who might be cast in the role of the fool? A new attack on Paris in Africa. What is Moscow's role? How can Uranus weaken France's position? And how is Russia building a new center of power? We'll discuss it today. Einstein's letters are back in the spotlight, and Trump is mentioned in them. All the details, the reasons for the appearance of these letters, and other important world political events in our broadcast today. In eastern Ukraine, Russian military forces conducted an operation using a heavy aerial bomb, the consequences of which have been widely discussed in the information space. According to Russian sources, airstrikes were carried out on the fortified positions of the 38th Marine Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine using a munition weighing about 3 tons. Russian sources claim it could be a bomb comparable to the design known as the FAB-3000, which weighs close to 3 tons and is intended to strike heavily fortified targets. For contrast, it's worth remembering that the more common FAP-500 model in domestic and Soviet arsenals has a mass of around 500 kilograms and is used for medium-level destruction. Russian sources emphasize the difference between these types of ammunition and note that the use of a heavy 3-ton bomb indicates a targeted strike against deeply fortified enemy positions, rather than an attempt to inflict mass destruction across the territory as a whole. Military correspondents note that the operation was accompanied by reconnaissance using 2 unmanned aerial vehicles, which assessed the effectiveness of the airstrikes and allowed for real-time adjustments to the Air Force's actions. Russian sources emphasize that the strike was aimed exclusively at military facilities, and the use of precision-guided munitions allowed for the minimization of the threat to civilian infrastructure. After the strike, videos and images appeared online showing characteristics of a powerful explosion. Sources emphasize that these visual effects only reflect the destructive power when fortified points are hit. They are evidence of the use of nuclear weapons. At the same time, external verification of information about the use of a 3-ton bomb specifically remains partially limited. Russian sources claim one thing. However, independent confirmations in open external data are significantly less frequent. Therefore, publications are accompanied by clarifying statements about the nature of the parties' claims. The unexpected turn of events attracted the attention of political commentators. A version has appeared in the information space that Vladimir Putin received a message from Donald Trump related to the situation around Ukraine. The mediator was a mysterious visitor who appeared in the Kremlin earlier this week, and his visit did not go unnoticed. On November 11th, Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev arrived in Moscow. This meeting was of interest not only because Tokayev is a key figure in the region, but also because he had held talks with Trump shortly before his visit to the Kremlin. The official announcement about the meeting in Moscow was concise. It was only reported that the presidents intend to discuss issues of particular interest without detailing the list of topics. However, political analysts suggested that the discussion might have touched upon the Ukrainian conflict. According to expert Arthur Suleimanov, it is possible that the Kazakh leader arrived with a personal message from Trump. The American politician is likely trying to remind Ukraine of the need to return to dialogue. If the assumption is correct, such a signal is significant for the Kremlin, as Trump is seeking to influence the course of the conflict remotely, using intermediaries. It's worth remembering that just recently, Tokayev proposed considering Kazakhstan as a venue for a new round of negotiations between Moscow and Kiev. For Moscow, it is fundamentally important not only to achieve a ceasefire but also to discuss the reasons that led to the conflict. Trump had previously expressed understanding of Russia's position, but then abruptly changed course. He canceled a possible meeting with Putin in Hungary and announced his intention to increase pressure through new sanctions. This approach, according to many observers, cannot lead to real progress. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service has released a statement claiming that the Armenian government is considering refusing to purchase Russian wheat and intends to switch to Ukrainian products. According to Russian sources, this step is part of a broader plan that allows Yerevan to reduce its economic dependence on Moscow. It is also stated that the purchase of grain from Kiev should be accompanied by financial support from the European Union, which is expected to compensate for the price difference between Ukrainian and Russian grain. Armenia, according to Russian intelligence data, was hoping to solve several tasks at once. Firstly, to demonstrably reduce imports from Russia. Secondly, to purchase Ukrainian grain, which would help support Kiev politically and financially. Thirdly, to pass on the additional costs to the European Union. Ukrainian grain, according to Russian sources, is estimated to be more than 1.5 times more expensive than Russian grain. However, Yerevan was reportedly willing to ignore the economic component for the sake of political effect. However, according to Russian sources, Brussels' reaction was less enthusiastic. The materials mention that European officials are considering the possible consequences. Grain cost compensation would require regular funding, not a one-time solution. Additionally, the intelligence data indicates that the European Union is facing budget constraints and is discussing the fate of frozen Russian assets, which cannot be freely directed towards such projects. After the publication of the Foreign Intelligence Service data, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan issued a denial. He called the widespread information a misunderstanding and stated that Yerevan, on the contrary, intends to expand economic cooperation with Russia. According to him, increasing trade turnover through the railway route passing through Azerbaijan is being discussed, and grain is among the key import items. Thus, Pashinyan made it clear that there are no plans to refuse Russian wheat. Some suggest that the Armenian leadership is striving for maximum possible independence and is using external resources to weaken its dependence on Russia. Others believe that such maneuvers could backfire and make the country vulnerable to foreign interests. The discussion about the possibility of using frozen Russian assets to finance Ukraine continues in European media. Previously, the European Union was considering an option where Belgium could act as a guarantor for a possible loan secured by funds frozen within the EU. However, this initiative did not receive support. Belgian authorities stated that the country will not take responsibility for the risks associated with the legal consequences of seizing Russian assets. After Belgium declined, European sources began reporting the emergence of a new potential candidate. According to British media reports, the offer to act as a guarantor was considered in the Norwegian parliament. Sources claimed that the country could participate in a mechanism to provide Ukraine with a large loan, which is to be secured by future payments from Russian assets frozen in European financial institutions. Publications mentioned that guaranteeing a possible loan could be done using funds from the Government Pension Fund of Norway, also known as the National Wealth Fund. As Norwegian sources indicate, the discussion in Parliament did indeed take place. However, only 4 out of 9 political parties expressed support for the idea, mainly representing the ruling coalition. Opposition parties have spoken out against the use of sovereign wealth fund assets for any scheme related to a possible loan to Ukraine. Russia has already warned that in the event of the unfreezing and seizure of its assets, the response will be immediate. European countries, aware of the potential consequences, are still hesitant to take this step. Amid a major corruption scandal that has erupted in Kyiv, foreign media are reporting on the possible political consequences for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to the Washington Post, the investigation, which involved former associates of the head of state, intensified internal pressure on the administration, causing discontent within government and military circles. The publication notes that corruption charges against a number of high-ranking officials who were previously in Zelensky's inner circle have dealt a serious blow to his reputation, especially against the backdrop of ongoing requests for Western financial aid. In an analytical article, the Foreign Affairs Forum Journal writes that the scandal could lead to structural changes in the political leadership, up to and including the possible resignation of Zelensky in the event of further growth in public discontent and pressure from Western partners insisting on anti-corruption reforms. According to publications, officials from the Ukrainian administration are currently refraining from commenting, limiting themselves to statements about internal checks and the need to await the results of investigations. While global attention is focused on events surrounding the Russian military operation, Moscow is strengthening its position in the African direction. International publications are reporting on the growing influence of Russia in African countries following the withdrawal of the French military contingent. French President Emmanuel Macron stated earlier that Paris is reducing its military presence in the region. Against this backdrop, there has been an opportunity for a redistribution of political and economic interaction on the continent, which Moscow is actively taking advantage of. According to the African division of Business Insider, Paris is particularly displeased with the situation in Niger. The authorities of this country are considering the possibility of concluding a contract to supply Russia with approximately 1,000 tons of uranium. For Niger, this is a strategic decision, as the republic previously focused on the European market and collaborated with French companies in the extraction of raw materials for nuclear energy. Uranium from Niger was important for the French nuclear industry, supplying up to 15% of France's nuclear power plant needs. Reorienting supplies to Russia could reduce Paris's raw material base and force it to seek new suppliers, while for Niger it would decrease dependence on Europe and expand foreign policy ties. Particular attention is drawn to the fact that uranium is being mined at a deposit previously controlled by the French company Orano, which is intensifying the political debate in France. Russia is expanding its influence in Africa by offering economic projects and mutually beneficial cooperation. Experts believe that Niger's course could be a signal to other countries in the region, strengthening Moscow's presence and creating a new center of power independent of Western structures. Members of the U.S. House Oversight Committee, representing the Democratic Party, have released 3 emails attributed to financier Jeffrey Epstein. In the correspondence, dated from different years, the name of former U.S. President Donald Trump is mentioned. Epstein was previously accused of sex trafficking and engaging with minors. He died in prison while awaiting trial. According to Democrats, one of the letters was sent by Epstein in 2011 to Ghislaine Maxwell, who was subsequently sentenced to a lengthy prison term for aiding in the exploitation of minors. The letter states that Donald Trump was at Epstein's house for several hours with a girl whom Democrats are calling a potential victim. In another message, already in 2019, Epstein claims that Trump was allegedly aware of the girl's presence and asked Maxwell to stop them from appearing. Democratic Party representatives stated that the publication of the correspondence calls into question the president's previous statement about his lack of knowledge of Epstein's activities. They are demanding that the Ministry of Justice fully disclose documents related to the investigation, including materials that were not previously published. The scandal surrounding Trump's possible involvement with Epstein's circle has flared up again. In the summer, against the backdrop of the election campaign, The former president stated that he would reveal all the details of the case and publish a complete list of individuals involved in the financier's activities. However, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have stated that no such list exists. Critics saw this as an attempt to restrict access to information. However, the authorities are not commenting on the reasons for their decision. Friends, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. That I want to warn you that I've just discovered a lot of channels on air with my voice clones who are presenting themselves as me, Valerie. I would like to remind you that the original announcer, Valerie, only works on the Events Wave channel. I wish you well, peace, and all the best. See you soon.